thank you all, and thank you for hanging in there. I know it's the end of a long day and you're ready to get to the really fun part. I promise to keep this quick and hopefully light, even though I am a data nerd and I'm going to be throwing some numbers at you. We'll try to make it fun. Today, I'm going to be talking about polarization, political polarization, and I know you guys probably see that a lot. I'm going to take a really quick overview sort of nationally and then bring it here to Oregon and see how it plays out in our state and what we might want to do about that. Next slide, please. So one of the questions is how polarization shows up, and I'm sure you guys all see that in some of the big issues, right? You'd expect to see it around abortion and gun issues and climate change. And I just wanted to take a minute to show you some of the other ways that is showing up. One of the big things we see at the national level is that just deep entrenched tribalism, right? And so this is next slide, please. This shows you a little bit about some research that Pew has done. And it's about how we see people from another political group. And blue is what Democrats say about Republicans. Red is what Republicans say about Democrats. And what you can see is over the last 6 years, we've grown increasingly hostile to people who are from a different group than us, right? So Democrats say Republicans are closed-minded, they're dishonest, they're immoral, they're not intelligent. Republicans say the same thing about Democrats with a little bit more adding about lazy. And what you really see is that we really seem to not like people who have a different political view than us. And what I don't show, actually, is also the number of people who don't like either party, and that has also gone up. And so just really what you see is just this growing dislike or tribalism, and people are hunkering into their little bubbles. Next slide, please. This is actually data from DHM over the past several years. And this is a general question that pollsters ask, and they say, are we going in the right direction or in the wrong track? And what you can see is that on this question as well, way back in 2001, there was pretty high agreement regardless of political party, right? That big drop is 9/11. And then over time, you see this really growing disparity in how Republicans and Democrats think about our state in general. Now, we are a blue state, and that's part of the reason why Republicans in particular might be more negative. But just again, there's a 40% gap right now between how Democrats view our state and how Republicans view our state. This is some data we have from January. We also have very different ideas about what our state should be focused on. So there in the first column, you see what are the top issues that Democrats care about when we're thinking about electing a governor in November. Homelessness, climate change, public health around COVID-19. Republicans have a completely different set of priorities. Cost of living, crime, and taxes, with the non-affiliated voters in yellow being kind of bridging those two. Next slide, please. And even opinions about institutions that we would not expect historically to be polarized have become politicized, right? So here in Oregon, again, these are Oregon numbers. Republicans are more confident about the Supreme Court than Democrats are. Next slide, please. And in contrast, Democrats are more confident in the FBI than Republicans. And what we can see is this doesn't necessarily fall along maybe traditional political ideologies. This is really about political events that we can all point to, right? We can point to the Supreme Court nominations, the comments that Trump in particular has made about the FBI, those sorts of things seem to be driving what people think. Next slide. So I painted you a story about what I'm seeing, and one big question is, well, does it really matter, right? Or do people care about this? Is this a concern? I would argue that it is, and once again, I'm going to rely on public opinion to sort of show you how other people feel about this issue. Next slide, please. So first, this deep polarization and the skepticism we have about people who are in a different party is seen as a threat to our democracy. And this, surprisingly, is one place where we do agree. So 74% of Oregonians say yes, democracy at our country is more at risk, and you can see there, it really, the difference between Democrats and Republicans is a few percentage points. The majority of everyone agrees this. Next slide. And if we ask, is our country divided? Yep, every 9 in 10 almost, a little over 8 in 10 for non-affiliated agree with that. Is Oregon politically divided? Yes, again, majority of people agree with that. Next slide, please. And here, again, are you worried about that? And once again, this data from Oregon Values and Beliefs Center shows us that the majority of Oregons are worried about the division in the US, and they're worried about the political division here in Oregon. And so what's interesting to me about this is, unlike some of those really big problems that we can't even agree are a problem, we actually do agree that this is a problem, which kind of leads to, next slide please, leads to the question, so what? What do we do about this? Next slide please. Normally, in a situation where we're trying to figure out a solution, one of the things we do as a research company is we come in and we try to find those shared values. And this is the exact same slide that I showed you earlier. And what I've done, instead of trying to pull out how we differ, I'm highlighting with color where majorities of us agree are problems. So here again, majorities of Oregonians agree homelessness in this state is a problem. Majorities agree cost of living, which includes probably inflation right now, is a problem. Healthcare, crime, these are all problems we agree on. One of the challenges is we know these are problems and we're still not solving them. And part of that is because of that polarization over what to do about it. Next slide, please. And the lack of progress on some of those big issues is part of what is leading people to be questioning whether we can make progress. So this data is about whether or not people think we can bridge this political divide. And what you can see on the left is really they're split. Can we do this? Yes, no. Most people don't know. Pretty much the same about Oregon too. Can we bridge this divide? Yes, no, maybe. Normally what I say is what this means is people just don't know. They don't know if we can do that, if we can make progress or not. And so one of the questions we asked was, well, what should we do to bridge this divide? And I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to note that I'm not an expert on how to execute grand political change in the country, and neither is the average person, right? Just like you wouldn't ask public opinion on how to make a bridge structurally sound, there are times when it's not appropriate to ask the public, what do we do about this? Because we don't know, right? In this case, I do think it's important to ask people, what should we do about this? For one thing, the majority of us participate in the political system. We actually do have knowledge of how the political system works. The majority of Oregonians do vote in most general elections. And in addition, all of us have had a lifetime experience of building relationships. So in the end, I think that this is a topic where public opinion has something to say to us. And in many ways, I think of that as just the sort of common sense, folk wisdom to bring to this topic. Next slide, please. So when I look through that data, I've pulled out a few quotes of what real people said to us. And for anyone who's had communications training or leadership training or been in counseling, I think the themes are going to be really, again, things that you already know, but they're being told to us. One is to listen, and to really listen, right? So if you've had those communications training, you know most of us listen, or most of us in a conversation are thinking more about what to say next than really listening. And so what the public is saying, listen to each other, for goodness sake, right? And try to understand other people's opinions. Next slide, please. Another theme that I see and what people say to us for what we should do to bridge this divide is to show respect. Again, right back to the basics. Respect people whose opinions are different from yours. Look for common ground. These are three quotes that all are echoing that theme and giving advice. Next slide, please. And finally, a really big theme that comes out of what Oregonians want to see is compromise. And here, I love these quotes because they're all just very simple, basic, short, just compromise, compromise, compromise. That's what people are saying. And so I just want to wrap up by saying, I think there is hope that we can all do our part to address this polarization in our political system, and it really doesn't take big actions. It takes these common sense steps that we already know: listen, respect, and compromise. And I really do believe, and I'm hoping that Oregonians can be more hopeful as well, that we can lay the foundation to do the work that our state needs to address these big issues. Thank you for listening.